this forward. So.
Yeah, the big green.
Thank you very much. Egomaniacal developer, new title. Great. So, as was mentioned, I work for TMG. We're a San Francisco-based company. We're about 30 years old. We've been extremely active. We only do Bay Area. We think this is a local business, knowing ultimately the buildings and the tenants. We like repositioning old buildings. The harder, the better, in our view. The bigger the opportunity. I thought I'd also show you, we've done about 19 projects south of Market in our history, so we've been all over this part of the world. But I think it's good, given all the hype that's happening now, maybe take a look back at how did this all happen. And as a multi-generation San Franciscan, it didn't always look like this, and this wasn't always happening here. So here's a little timeline. If you look back in 1980s, Market Street spine was sort of no man's land. That was the dividing line. And really the big moves south of Market started then. Nordstrom couldn't find a store in Union Square, and they pushed south of Market. Come into 5th and Market was no man's land back then. So you really have to understand this was a huge move. Hotels coming south of Market, again, Marriott and Westin, there's no more space around Union Square. So this was a function of running out of space, sort of what we're seeing today. And then downtown high-rises like 101 California, 333 Bush, big buildings being built near the transit spine and starting to push south of Market. In 1990 to 2000, for those of us that remember it, this was a real estate crash, unlike any real estate crash, much worse than what we all went through from a real estate perspective. Major failings of banks. And what you see here is pretty much no development for 10 years. This is deliveries. These are actually completed projects. And in fact, the stuff you see here almost entirely was done by the redevelopment agencies. So you get the Moscone Center developed, and then you get some housing down south by the waterfront, that's Bayside Village. These are both projects that were developed with the redevelopment agency because there just wasn't any private money for development. As we move forward in the 2000 to 2005 period, which is the first wave of tech in San Francisco, two big things happen. We get the ballpark anchoring the south end, and we start to get what we then referred to as Multimedia Gulch, which is now just SOMA, repositioning of warehouses, old brick buildings. My family was in the coffee business, and we had lots of brick buildings down in this area. They all got repositioned. And two other big things happened. The Four Seasons and the St. Regis march into this part of town. And these are big moves for luxury hotels to come one south of Market and to be at 3rd Street. 3rd Street in 1990 was really no man's land. I mean, 2nd Street was no man's land by 1999 even. So these are big shifts, and they could have chosen to go to the waterfront where a lot of residential went. They didn't choose to go there. They chose to cluster around the convention center, but even more so around arts, because Four Seasons and St. Regis really aren't convention hotels. As we move into the 2005 to 2010 period, Bloomingdale's moved south of Market. Now things are starting to really accelerate. This is a huge shift to get a New York retailer to come south of Market. We get new hotels with the Intercontinental. We get the residential boom coming into south of Market, and in particular Rincon Hill, which would be the upper left side of this slide. So if you look at this over time, you get office growth that sort of pushes itself around and back up right into this area where we all are today. 2010 to 2015, we get Target comes south of Market, big box retail into south of Market. Again, huge shift. The Transbay Terminal was being built. 155 Fifth is a project we did and brought the University of the Pacific's dental school out of Pacific Heights down south of Market. Market Street Place will be 250,000 feet of new retail. We built about 600 units of housing also on that 5th Street spine. And then the Chronicles property, which is about 4 acres over on 5th Street, is getting repositioned. So the entirety now of 5th Street between Folsom and Market will change. Now you look forward, what's happening in 10 to 15 down Market Street? We've all sort of heard about mid-market. Here's the scale of what's going on in mid-market. Okay, I think you don't realize it unless you put it up on a slide like this. But this is a wholesale transformation. And the owners of these properties are not sort of fly-by-night developers. These are big institutional owners, whether they're REITs, whether they're private families like the Shorenstein family bought the Mart. So this is a transition that when we look back in 5 years, will look nothing like it used to. I think as a native, I would tell you that If somebody told me they were going to clean up Market Street between 5th and Van Ness, I would have said 20 years, not 2. And it's really going to be 2, 3, 4 years. We're going to look back, and this will be a completely different place. Now going forward to a couple of our projects, 680 Folsom and Hams, which are things we're working on. We got the redheaded stepchild of Pacific Bell. Seth got the grand old dam. We got the redheaded stepchild. So this is 680 Folsom Street. It's a precast building from 1964. When we acquired it, it was the antipathy of good workspace. It was essentially coated in asbestos. We did about $7 million of asbestos remediation that people were working inside the space. The spaces themselves weren't very nice, but it had good bones. So the building was really 3 different buildings, but big concrete precast, about 9-foot ceilings, and it hadn't been rehabbed since it was originally built. The building's about 12 stories, 375,000 feet, and it had a little annex building, which is an equally attractive but shorter version. Here is Soma, 1974. So again, a little perspective on when this building's now 10 years old. And if you look, you can see the building we're in just up and to the right from there. But down here at the time, the low squat flat one at the bottom is SBC, 680 Folsom, and 140 New Montgomery. Those are all telephone buildings. There's an AT&T switch, and the gorgeous glassy thing over to the left is a data center for Wells Fargo, which is the building we transitioned to the University of Pacific recently. But there's nothing down here. When I was growing up, I was allowed to go to the Haight. I was not allowed to go to south of Market because it was Skid Row. Okay, it may say more about my parents, but I prefer to think of it as this was actually worse. Here's what it looks like today. So everything's been built around here. So this was the building we inherited, much like Seth was showing you. It was attractively finished, kind of space you'd really want to work in. There were coffee stains on the floor. It was just amazing to look at, very low ceilings. So we reimagined the building differently. We said, we're going to take the bones of the building and reclad it and expand it. So we're adding floors to the building, pushing out the skin, and completely transitioning the building. We thought that if we were able to do this, we could completely transform this building. It has great bones, very, very tall floors, 15 feet deck to deck, very big floor plates. It's about 31,000 feet. So we sort of saw this as a Silicon Valley type building that we could bring to San Francisco. It's very hard to get, as you guys probably know, dense open plan workspace in San Francisco. Here's that attractive squat building, and here's how we re-envisioned that. So when we're done, the building will go from about 375,000 feet to 525,000 feet, new skin. We've got 11 feet of glass in a 15-foot module, so this is the highest glass, I think, of any building in San Francisco. 14.6 exposed ceiling if you want. We expanded the 35,000-foot floor, so a 35,000-foot plate. We actually over-engineered the building seismically. We really do believe that big corporations should be thinking about seismic safety. If there is a major earthquake and you're in a building that is affected, you are not going to be able to find space, because if your building's affected, other buildings are affected, and it's something we really do believe large tenants should be focused on. If you're a smaller tenant, there might be somewhere to go, but if you're 250,000 feet, there probably aren't going to be a lot of available spaces. Density, we designed the building for 1 person per 100 square feet. So the code would tell us there's going to be 1 person per 250 square feet. I think we all know that's probably not true. We're seeing densities around 1 to 130 in general. We over-designed from that. So bathrooms, mechanical systems, every system in the building. And then we developed a whole bunch of private open spaces in the building. And of course, it's designed LEED Gold. So here we are reconstructing the building. Unlike Seth, saving the skin wasn't really a choice. Here we are coming back with the new skin. This project's just about complete. And unlike Seth, we cut the middle out of our building. The building, when it was built for Pac Bell, was built in an era of different codes and just wasn't designed for a modern tenant. So we said, rather than trying to work with what was there, we would completely cut the middle out of the building and put a new core into the building, oversize the bathrooms, multiple stairs. We had 3 stairs as opposed to 2 to get the densities. So we end up with a very large, efficient floor plate. And what you'll see, the areas in blue are where we added density. So when we inherited the building, it essentially had a square core inside a rectangle. It was very, very inefficient. Shallow on the long sides and too deep on the short sides. So we end up by putting a new core in the building with a pretty rational floor plate that runs all the way around it. A new lobby. This is a rooftop deck. It's 5,000 square feet on top of the building, available to the tenants. New outdoor open space between the little building and the big building. On the flip side of this, we're redoing the old Ham's Brewery, which is in the Mission. And we envision that as a very different creative space. So there, we inherited, again, very attractive looking building. It had bathroom tile on the front of the building. You think I'm kidding, that's bathroom tile. Said maybe we could do something a little bit better than that. So we reclad the front of the building, gave it new windows, and brought it back to the industrial aesthetic that really was the building. If you're from San Francisco, this is the building that had the big Ham's cup on the top of it and was an icon for many, many years. So we tried to strip this back to its more industrial aesthetic. This was a lobby that was in the building when we got it. Somebody sort of tried to take it tech, but didn't quite take it far enough in our opinion, so we pushed it a little further. This is what we redid with the lobby. And we brought in the guys from Flower and Water, Salumeria concept into the building. We really think amenitizing buildings for our tenants is extremely important. And that tenant experience begins from the front door and carries through the building. Here was the old lobby. We picked up on the theme from the Ham's Brewery. There's actually a museum in here to the history of Ham's. At one point, the building was a squat for punk rockers. So we've got kind of a neat history that runs with it. We built a new rooftop deck, and we end up with really interesting creative spaces, and much like Seth, bikes are key. We are a dogs and bike building there because that really is our tenant. They come out of most of our tenants come from the Mission, they're biking there. This is a lifestyle building. So we're creating a lifestyle workspace. Thank you very much.